There's something about the American investor, and it goes back to that word complacency. And if there's anything that any viewer can take away from today, which is it's not really a time to be complacent. Americans have a tendency to believe that technology will solve every problem and government will solve every financial problem. And for eons, they've been correct. But the moment you're incorrect, or when technology starts to work against you, and when all of this financial intervention works against you, the snapback is disgusting. And so the idea that you're going to find some technique to eliminate $35 trillion of debt is complete nonsense, and it's actually dangerous. And to tie it back to gold, the more people talk about that, the more people should buy gold, because that's nonsense, and it will lead to financial Armageddon.
Hi, and welcome to Speak Up. I'm your host, Anthony Scaramucci. Today, we are joined once again by the Wealthion founder and my old friend, Steven Feldman. And for those of you that don't know Steven, he is the founder of GBI, Gold Bullion International. He also worked together with me, actually, at Goldman Sachs for many years, for me at least 7, for Steve much longer than that, multiple decades. And when I say that we work together, Steven, it's just like today. You do all the work. I try to take all the credit. And we're still doing that. It's 3 decades later. So I do owe you a debt of gratitude. So let's start there. Thank you for joining us. You've got over $4 billion under management at GBI. Congratulations. You've built an incredible business. But how's it going? Tell me a little bit about where you are business-wise. Let's talk a little bit about the economy. Then I want to get into these 2024 predictions that we made at the beginning of the year. And I'm just going to let everybody know that's listening, I'm grading the two of us on a curve, which means we did phenomenally well, Steven. Okay, it's like that physics high school exam that I got a 25 on, but the rest of the class got a 17. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, I appreciate you setting the bar low.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have to do that in life. Low expectations are the key to happiness, Steven. But tell us a little bit about your business first off, and then a little bit about what you see in the economy.
Well, listen, they are inextricably connected. So we've had a heck of a year, and it's not surprising if you are watching the tape and you see what's happening to gold prices, and you see what's happening to silver prices, which is the primary businesses that we're in. So, 2024, if you take the exuberance of AI out of the equation, it's just another year where people are concerned about risks that have a way of making gold a more attractive on a relative basis asset. So gold's always sitting there as a hedge against government chaos. And, you can't go a half minute or a half day without seeing more of it. We're living in it right now in the Biden echo of debate. We have Modi hugging Putin in Russia. We have wars going on in 2 continents. We have a federal deficit. It's going to reach $2 trillion this year. We got $34 trillion of debt. We have inflation. We've got mismanagement of the U.S. government in many ways. I'm not trying to be political, but when you're an economist or have an economics background, you can't be comfortable with this. All of that is mitigated to helping our business. Just a couple of in between the time we spoke last and now, even Costco has sold $1 billion of precious metals, and that's buying it in a box and taking it home, and it's illiquid and you can't sell it. And so our business, which services the investors, has done a multiple of that better.
I'm going to ask this rhetorically, but I want you to answer it. Is it fair to say that the gold over the last 12 to 18 months has done better than the 500 best companies in the United States? So if you took the S&P 500 and you took gold is outperforming the S&P.
Well, I'm going to make 2 comments on that. Go to the S&P 493 and it's blowing away the 493.
Okay, so let me stop you there. So what Stephen is referring to, there's the Magnificent Seven, these very large cap tech stocks, which include Nvidia, Netflix, and Amazon, and Facebook and Google, etc. Apple. Those stocks are rushing. The 493 that Stephen's referring to not doing so well. So go ahead, compare it to the 493.
So it's outperforming the S&P on a apples to apples basis. I don't have the statistics exact, but I went year to date, 12 months, 5 years, January 1st, 2000, gold, that horrible asset, that pessimistic asset, that asset that, Warren Buffett's diminishes, but yet has no credit risk, no counterparty risk, no worry, has outperformed stocks. Now, but it does so in a boring, quote, pessimistic way, so people are still loath to buy it. The average investor is still, I think the American investor is still south of 1% of assets in precious metals and gold. So certainly if the Western investor would change its mind, it would explode. Right now it's exploding in large part on the back of demand from outside of the United States, but the United States demand is actually healthier than people would think. So, again, I'm not, often I get accused of being down on stocks. I'm not. I get it. I understand that you have to stay invested and you have to take your lumps when the market corrects. But that doesn't mean you have to be complacent. And that's where we are in the market today.
And I think that's fair. And that's a good segue into these predictions. And so I want to go over some of them with you, get you to react to some of the things that we were saying at the beginning of the year. It's the midpoint of the year now, and I want to obviously follow up with more predictions. And by the way, this segment of Speak Up is dedicated to the late and very great Byron Wien, who you and I both know every year came out with his 10 predictions, and they were more outlandish and crazy than the last year, and a lot of them came true. This is sort of the weird thing about all of this. So the economic growth we thought would decelerate in 2024, but a significant recession would be averted.
So far, so good.
So far, so good, right? No
Right.
rate cuts now, but they sort of feel like that they're on the horizon, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
the predictive markets would say 2 cuts between now and the end of the year. And as long as we're predicting, I think the Fed is completely and utterly boxed in.
Yep.
So trying to manage inflation on the one hand and trying to manage a federal deficit that's bloated because of higher interest on higher debt on the other side.
Yeah.
This has happened once before. It was post-World War II, and the Fed cut because they're not going to bankrupt the government over a little inflation.
Right. Okay. All right. So we sort of feel like rate cuts are coming, and obviously I always point people towards trueflation.com, which is a fabulous aggregator of data, real-time data aggregating from all over, literally cash registers, referring in data to different prices and barcodes and so forth. And they say that the inflation now is at about 2.3%, which is 90 basis points lower than what the Fed is saying through the measurements that the government is using. So maybe we'll get these rate cuts at the end of the year. We did say that the deficit was going to explode. We thought it would head towards 10% of GDP. It's trending at 7%, but of course that assumes no recession. So obviously, if we go into a recession, it could really hurt us, really explode. What do you say about modern monetary theory, where there are people out there that believe that you can just print the coin? Doesn't matter. Let's print a $34 trillion coin. We can pay off the debt tonight and call it a day. What do you say to those people? Or are they onto something? Or are they wrong about it?
Well, what I really say, I wouldn't say in public. It's a bit of a joke. There's something about the American investor, and it goes back to that word complacency. And if there's anything that any viewer can take away from today, which is it's not really a time to be complacent. Americans have a tendency to believe that technology will solve every problem and government will solve every financial problem. And for eons, they've been correct. But the moment you're incorrect, or when technology starts to work against you, and when all of this financial intervention works against you, the snapback is disgusting. And so the idea that you're going to find some technique to eliminate $35 trillion of debt is complete nonsense, and it's actually dangerous. And to tie it back to gold, the more people talk about that, the more people should buy gold, because that's nonsense and it will lead to financial Armageddon.
Okay. All right. So I agree with you. So we're going to go right to number 2. Okay. We're talking about the economy. Now we're going to the merger of the year. Apple buys Disney. Now that has not happened yet. And I say yet because I still think that could happen. Do you disagree with me?
I think we need a bigger audience in order to get that seed out there in the market. And, some way, shape, or form, if we can just get Tim Cook to watch our idea. I was a banker at Goldman. I'd be pitching it.
Right.
I think that, I have an iPhone. I haven't renewed it this time. I don't need a better camera. I don't need more memory. I don't need any more apps. It works just fine. And so what is going to encourage me to continue to upgrade my phone? It's going to be content. And Paramount just traded. And so there's something to the idea that Apple needs to be more in the ecosphere of entertainment. And so I think it makes quite a bit of sense. It would be a big gulp, but not for Apple. Apple could do it in cash.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. Okay, so I fired this one in, and it looked like I was right for about 10 seconds when IBM reported better than expected AI revenues, and then it went right back to trend line. So I said that IBM is going to come back into the news as a range of corporate AI products catch fire. It happened for a second. It's not happening any longer. Let's just compare IBM to NVIDIA for a second. NVIDIA is up 150% this year, first 6 months of the year. IBM is up 10. S&P, of course, is up about 16 or 17. So are we selling IBM, Steven? I'm just, because I've been cheating off of your notes for 30 years. So what are we doing?
We missed the fact that just because you can create a machine that can beat a human in chess doesn't mean that you conquered AI.
Right.
And so I think they missed the moment. And now it's all about hardware. And you see all the semiconductor stocks exploding. And it's now leaked well past NVIDIA. Mm-hmm. And I don't think IBM is providing the CPU that the AI community needs. And AI as a service, maybe Watson should have owned that market. But I feel like companies like Palantir are doing a better job of that for the moment.
Okay.
Have more buzz. So am I a seller? Dividend. So as I age, I like that dividend. I like that passive income. But if you're looking to maximize gains, it's a bit of a turtle in the turtle and hare race.
Okay. All right. Let's go to an asset that is simultaneously a turtle and a hare, depending on the day. That would be Bitcoin. And so it's turtling right now as opposed to herring. But we thought, or at least I thought, Brazil was going to enter the area, the space where they would allow for a digital real and accept Bitcoin as a form of currency in the country. That did not happen. It's still only El Salvador. But now we have new leadership in Argentina. Milei is there. What do you think? Any chance of it happening in other parts of South America?
I'm going to have to bounce this back to you. The one thing that sits in my mind as an investor is the use case for Bitcoin. And from what I understand is the use case for Bitcoin beyond store of value hasn't emerged in the same way that people would have predicted 5 or 7 years ago. But I'm not on top of it the same way you are. And so as a store of value, it's already proven itself. And, it's got value. It's got $1 trillion plus of value, or some number, I'm not positive exactly. but it's north of $1 trillion. It's been relatively stable for the last year. It's been relatively widely held, and but again, is it just merely we found something else to own and put away in a wallet forever, or is it going to become something useful? You can say the same thing about gold, but at least gold is in jewelry, and gold is a globally accepted reserve asset. So central banks find that use case as very, very attractive. There's no Bitcoin in a reserve that I'm aware of
Okay.
besides El Salvador.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No, yeah. And I listen. I'm. I don't want to go too deep into the Bitcoin rabbit hole right at this moment in this prediction podcast, but I will say the following to you, which I think I think you do agree with. You said it once back to me, so I'll repeat it. You felt that Bitcoin really benefited from COVID-19, that the acceleration of all that deployment of surplus money that went into Bitcoin stabilized it, and it helped it get to the crossover point of it having an ETF. And so I don't see Bitcoin necessarily for you and I. We are the end of the baby boomers in terms of the demography, in terms of when our years of birth were. But I do see uh, I do see a younger generation, my children, our children's generation, accepting this similar to the way our generation has accepted gold. And so that's me. Well, we'll see what happens. Didn't get that one right. The Ukraine, we thought that there would be some cutbacks in the military support from the United States and its allies of the Ukraine. But that didn't happen, but it almost happened. And I think what was interesting about that is, Mike Johnson went to see former President Donald Trump, who's obviously pro-Putin, pro-Russia, and he went down there and told him, hey, man, if you allow this thing to unravel during the election year, this could have tremendous blowback on you as you're being criticized by our allies and being criticized internally. And so anyway, make a long story short, they got the bill done. But ceasefire on the horizon, Stephen, or you think we've got several more years of warfare?
Well, tell me who's going to win the 2024 election, and I'll tell you what happens in December.
Okay, well, so let's workshop that. So Biden wins, what happens?
Biden has gone out there and said, even in last week's NATO meeting, or was it a week ago, where they're not going to let Ukraine into NATO, but they reinforced the support, financial support and military support of the Ukraine army and the Ukraine people. So Biden wins. You'd have to expect unless he forgets, which is possible, that they'll stay committed to that. If Trump wins, I think by the end of the year, he'll be threatening stopping military aid and financial aid to Ukraine as a way to force
Ukraine will lose half its territory, and Putin will declare victory, and the Ukraine will be down to a few cities on the eastern side of the Ukraine. And that, and then the question will be, what does that mean? And I'll just leave our viewers and listeners with this one thought. Two countries have very smart people in the countries, Finland and Sweden. NATO is celebrating its 75th anniversary this week, actually. There's a NATO summit here in Washington. Finland and Sweden, for 74 years, Stephen, elected not to join NATO, but they entered NATO this past year. And so they see a threat. There's no reason for Sweden and Finland to join NATO if they don't see a threat. Why haven't they joined NATO? It was the Soviet Union, the Soviet Empire. They elected not to join NATO, but now they feel a need to join NATO. I just think it's a cautionary signal light out there in terms of the geopolitical dashboard.
Yeah, well, listen, there's 32 countries in NATO. Ukraine would be 33, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. And there's another 130 countries or 125 countries that are not in NATO. And, a lot of those countries are flexing their muscles and flexing them together. And the decline of American dominance, not necessarily the decline of American influence, but American dominance is creating a lot of satellites and a lot of power grabs and a lot of chaos. And so the reordering, whether that's reordering of supply chains, of military alliances, trade alliances, currencies, multinational organizations, the UN, all of those things are in a multi-year process of reordering. And that's, again, I keep taking this back to the chaos that is government. And we're just going to go through this long period of reordering. It's going to be very hard to predict, and it's going to be unsettling for the foreseeable future.
Okay, well said. I'm gonna be the Jeopardy judge here, and I'm gonna give us lots of credit on the presidential election. And so, we said at the beginning part of the year that Joe Biden would experience a health scare. We said that there would be a threat or pressure for him to step down, as the parties are looking for a candidate to beat Donald Trump. We proffered J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, or potentially Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Whitmer has obviously dropped out. Obviously, she spoke publicly about that. But this is very close. And I'm going to give us some credit on this because a lot of people are saying this wasn't going to happen. And that's been in the news recently. Section B of this prediction was about a felony conviction for Donald Trump. Now, we did think it was going to be on classified documents, but he did get 34 conviction counts on the Stormy Daniels situation. We also said Trump would experience a major bump in fundraising and a minor bump in the polls as a result of this. So I'm giving us credit on that. Okay, I'm the Jeopardy judge, and I'm giving us credit. But we are saying that it's still, despite the fact that we have two movies playing, there are two movies playing in your local cinema on election day. One is Weekend at Bernie's. At least they haven't pulled the movie yet. Okay. And the other is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So now you have the choice between elderly and forgetful and brain freezing or a full-on lunatic that potentially needs a lobotomy. Those are the two movies playing. And so we're saying that the election is still unpredictable unless you want to switch gears here. But I think the thing is still very close despite all of the fiascos that are happening and the levels of dysfunctionality.
I just want to say that I'm going to get some comments on this video for the following. This is American exceptionalism. 330 million Americans, the finest universities on the planet, in many ways, a great value system as a foundation. Yeah. And we got these two guys for president.
Incredible economy, and we've got a combined age of 159, right. And 83% of the people would prefer two different candidates. All right,
I could throw a dart and find a better person.
Right, exactly. Or I may support the water bottle that's next to me here. Okay, let's go to China. Property struggles continue. Okay, we are worried. We're worried about the relationships there with Taiwan. But I think you got this one right. You said that there would be regional banking weakness. There'd be uncertainty about the economy. And I think that that's happening. And so we'll stay tuned on that. This was a really good one, actually. The use of artificial intelligence to help cure different gene-related diseases, whether it's cystic fibrosis or muscular dystrophy, Huntington's disease. And we think that there are AI models, sophisticated AI models out there that can help us find the right potential solutions, unlock this. This is inconclusive. It's happening, but I think we would both say that it's no high-profile cure yet.
Although I did go into ChatGPT and Perplexity this morning to find progress, any evidence of this, and I put in those particular diseases, and every one of them said that progress has accelerated with the use of AI. Everyone. So, the simple statement is that even if you can't synthesize things differently with AI, you can certainly do your clinical trials in a different way. And you can actually create digital twins that will create synthetic trials. And maybe they're not as good as human trials, but they'll happen in a minute versus 12 years. And if you're suffering from something that's debilitating, then who cares? I'd rather take something 90 than wait 10 years and be dead in the interim. So I think this is probably the most exciting AI for the people who are suffering.
Mhm.
And if we can get this done, then the whole experiment was worth something.
And so just this month, 3 deans at Columbia University were added to the list of departure. So I give us credit on that one. However, our last one, Stephen, I don't give us credit on. And even though we were hair's breadth there, we got the 49ers right, but they went on to lose to the Chiefs. Of course, we thought the Ravens were going to get into the Super Bowl, and we were even suggesting potentially the Dolphins. They slept, of course, with the Fishes early in the playoffs, so that didn't happen. And so now we're turning to our tongue-in-cheek moments here before we close out Speak Up. And this is what I love about you. These are yours. So I could read them, but I don't think it's fair to you. So let's go. You start. Tell us your tongue-in-cheek prediction about Taylor Swift.
Oh, well, listen, I'm going to short circuit you on this one. These were all tongue in cheek, and none of them occurred. So, we were trying to
Okay.
find one thing that would be funny and true, and I think we failed pretty miserably.
Well, I'm still holding out. Mine was the one that I'm holding out for. I'm manifesting this one. And this is 50 years after Woody Allen's movie Sleeper. Elon Musk develops the orgasmatron. And so if you don't know what the orgasmatron is, if you're too young to know what it is, Google the orgasmatron. And trust me, you'll want it invented as much as I do. At least that's my belief.
I have a
But
feeling if it's invented, we won't be seeing Anthony on Speak Up anymore.
it's like what Eddie Murphy once said about something, which I can't repeat because Speak Up is a family show. But before we leave, I'm going to ask you, as one of our esteemed guests on this show, the best advice on how to balance a portfolio this month. What moves would you make? I'll start out by saying if people are underinvested in gold, let's move that one to we should increase some allocations to gold. And move beyond gold. We'll say that's one of them. Increase allocations to gold. What would be the other one?
I'm going to keep pounding on the word complacency. Recently, I helped a family member invest. That family member sold a home and came into some money. And I did a very deep dive with the help of some of my own personal advisors, but actually some of the Wealthion curated advisors. And you start to look at if you take themes that you like in the stock market, name one: AI, robotics, anything in information technology, hardware. It all trades at like 80 PEs. And trees don't grow to the sky. And I think people should take a look at their portfolio, take a minute, take a weekend, hire an advisor, read some of the newsletters, go to Seeking Alpha, call David Janney at Ameritrade, or Brett, who's one of our guys, and get help, because there is risk. And you said we're at the end of the baby boomers, you and me, so we're still earning, and we have some time to recover, but 5-7 years from now, you don't. So rotating a little bit, taking some chips off the table, declaring victory, because we've all had a really great stock market, and somehow thinking about growth stocks to value stocks, somehow thinking about moving from technology to energy and metals and to miners and things that are undervalued, thinking about staying in cash, which earns you, not just earns you 5%, but has the added option value of being able to take advantage of situations. And none have really arisen yet. We haven't seen a correction in the market since October of last year. And now we're at stupid, heady valuations on a lot of things. And I'm not diminishing the value of these fantastic companies. I wish I owned them. I wish I was the founder. But if I was sitting at a company and I was at a 70 PE that predicted 30% compounded growth the next 10 years, I'd be selling shares very quietly. But I'd be selling shares of my own company, taking some chips off the table. And so that's the move. It's not a move to say, go and buy this. I don't do that.
Okay.
Tell people to take a more molecular and thoughtful approach and just don't sit there and assume everything works out. That's
Nobody got hurt with that approach. In fact, if anything, I think there's the one thing where I do have some complacency is in my mindset, and I'll rephrase it. I have a healthy mindset as a result of taking your approach over the 3.5 decades of my investment life. I have moved chips off the table over the course of my investment career. So despite volatility, price action, me getting things wrong from an investment point of view, there's complacency is the wrong word, but there's calm. There's a calmness to the fact that there's been some diversity created in the investment portfolio.
And I don't think people should fear missing out so much. It's not about them. It's about you. It's about knowing your risk, about knowing what's enough. And once you have enough, you should take it's going to feel much worse once you have enough to lose it and then not have enough. That's going to be devastating emotionally to you versus leaving something on the table that you never really had. And so if people had that mindset, they'd all be better investors. And again, if you don't have the temperament to do it, one of the things, listen, I have to say this, it's a commercial for Wealthion. We have advisors. We didn't pick them because they were cowboys. We picked them because they're sensible, a little conservative, and we would welcome people to use them. So that's a bit of the commercial for why we did Wealthion, which was to help people become better investors, preserve their wealth, and try to grow it responsibly.
All right. Well, it's a brilliant note to end on. So I want to thank the legendary Steven Feldman, the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of GBI, for joining us today on Wealthion and joining us on Speak Up. And we're going to have you back, Steven. We have to repeat this regularly. If you like this video, you'll like this video as well. Check it out.